The first warning came at 6:12 in the morning, while the coffee was still dripping and my wife was upstairs pretending nothing had changed. My phone buzzed once on the kitchen counter, a small sound, almost polite, the kind of sound you ignore when life is normal. But life was not normal. Not anymore. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, picked up the phone, and saw the words that made the room tilt beneath me. Balance alert. Available funds below $25. For a second, I just stared at it, waiting for the numbers to correct themselves, like maybe the screen had glitched, like maybe the bank had made some harmless mistake. We had nearly $42,000 in that account 3 days earlier. Not lottery money, not mansion money, but real money. Mortgage money. Emergency money. The kind of money built from overtime, skipped vacations, packed lunches, and saying no to things everyone else seemed to say yes to. I was Ethan Carter, 39 years old, born outside Columbus, Ohio, the kind of man who knew exactly how long a water heater should last and how much a set of tires should cost. I worked as a project manager for a commercial HVAC company, which meant I spent my days walking job sites with a hard hat on, solving problems nobody noticed unless the air stopped working. I measured my life in invoices, schedules, miles driven, and promises kept. I was not flashy. I was not careless. And I sure as hell was not the kind of man who woke up to find his family account drained before sunrise on a Thursday. The kitchen felt too still around me. The refrigerator hummed. The coffee machine clicked. Outside, our quiet suburban street was waking up one garage door at a time, sprinklers ticking across green lawns, school buses grinding around corners, neighbors stepping into another ordinary American morning. Our house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac with white trim, a 2-car garage, and a maple tree Rebecca insisted looked beautiful every fall. From the sidewalk, we looked stable. From the outside, we looked like people who had figured life out. That is the cruel thing about appearances. They do not crack loudly. They hold their shape right up until the second they collapse. I opened the banking app with my thumb. The little spinning wheel turned and turned, slow as a judge thinking over a sentence. Then the transactions loaded. My stomach went cold. $2,800 at a luxury boutique downtown. $1,400 at a spa resort outside Indianapolis. $670 at a champagne brunch place I had never heard of. $900 at a designer shoe store. $1,200 transferred to a name I did not recognize. Then another transfer. Then another. The list kept going, clean black text on a white screen, each line more insulting than the last. Money did not vanish all at once. It bled out in perfect little cuts. I stood there in my socks, holding the phone, and felt something inside me go very quiet. Not rage. Not panic. Something colder. The kind of quiet that shows up when your heart is done asking permission to hurt. Upstairs, I heard Rebecca moving around. Closet doors sliding. Hangers clicking. Her heels crossing the bedroom floor with that sharp, confident rhythm I used to love. She had always moved like the world owed her space. Maybe I admired that once. Maybe I mistook entitlement for confidence because I wanted to believe I had married someone strong, not someone who saw my patience as weakness. 11 years of marriage teaches a man many things. It teaches him which floorboard creaks outside the nursery. It teaches him how to fold towels the way his wife likes them. It teaches him to apologize just to end an argument, to swallow a sentence because dinner is getting cold, to tell himself that stress changes people and tomorrow will be softer. But it also teaches him patterns. And Rebecca had patterns. The phone face down at dinner. The sudden password changes. The packages arriving when I was at work. The way she said, "Don't start," before I had even asked a question. I had seen the cracks. I just kept patching them with trust because that was what husbands were supposed to do. I tapped one of the transactions. Pending. Another. Pending. Another. Posted. My hand tightened around the phone until the edges pressed into my palm. We had a mortgage payment due in 6 days. My truck needed brakes. My mother's medical bill sat clipped to the calendar by the pantry door. Rebecca knew all of that. She knew because I had shown her the spreadsheet 2 nights ago, sitting right at this same kitchen island under this same warm light. She had nodded, bored, sipping wine from a glass she did not wash. "You worry too much, Ethan," she had said. "Money comes back." I remembered the way she smiled when she said it. Soft, dismissive, like I was a man counting pennies while she was busy living. That smile made sense now. The bank alert glowed on my screen like a flare in the dark. I heard her coming down the stairs, perfume arriving before she did, something expensive and floral that did not belong in a house with unpaid bills on the counter. Rebecca stepped into the kitchen wearing a cream blouse, fitted black slacks, and sunglasses pushed up in her hair, though the sun had barely cleared the rooftops. She looked at me, then at the phone in my hand, and not a single muscle in her face moved the way guilt should move. "You're up early," she said. Her voice was light, almost cheerful. I turned the screen toward her. "Where is the money?" She glanced at it for half a second, then reached past me for a travel mug. "Oh, that." 2 words. That was all she gave, $42,000. "Oh, that." I waited for an explanation. A fraud warning. A mistake. A family emergency. Anything human. Instead, she poured coffee like we were discussing the weather. "I needed access to funds," she said. "Access?" My voice came out calm, steadier than I felt. "Rebecca, the account is almost empty." She snapped the lid onto her mug and finally looked at me, really looked at me, with a tired little smile that cut deeper than shouting would have. "It was our account, Ethan. Don't act like I robbed a bank." The refrigerator hummed louder in the silence. Somewhere outside, a dog barked twice and stopped. I looked at my wife, the woman I had trusted with every password, every paycheck, every plan, and understood with a clarity that almost scared me that she had not just taken money. She had taken for granted that I would absorb the damage, fix the mess, and keep quiet. That had always been my role. The steady one, the reasonable one, the man who cleaned up after storms he did not create. But this time, the storm had a paper trail. This time, every swipe, every transfer, every careless little luxury had left footprints. And what Rebecca did not know, what she could not know yet, was that the bank had already called me twice before she came downstairs. They had flagged the spending pattern. They had frozen one card. They were reviewing the transfers. And by the time she reached whatever boutique or brunch table she thought was waiting for her that morning, her spending spree was going to hit a wall made of policy, signatures, and cold institutional math. I set my phone face down on the counter and looked her in the eye. "You should answer your phone today," I said. For the first time, her smile flickered. Rebecca's smile did not disappear all at once. It faded in stages, like a porch light losing power. First her eyes tightened. Then her fingers paused around the travel mug. Then the little curve at the corner of her mouth gave up. It lasted less than 2 seconds, but after 11 years of marriage, 2 seconds can tell a man everything. She covered it fast, of course. Rebecca was good at recovering. She had practiced that skill at dinner parties, school fundraisers, dealership offices, anywhere people might confuse confidence with character. She lifted the mug, took a slow sip, and gave me the kind of look people give a cashier when the coupon does not scan. "What is that supposed to mean?" she asked. I almost answered. The old version of me would have. The old version would have explained, defended, pleaded, maybe even apologized for making the morning uncomfortable. That man had spent too many years translating disrespect into stress, selfishness into personality, silence into peace. But something about seeing those transactions lined up on my phone had changed the temperature inside me. I did not want to argue anymore. Arguments were fog. Bank records were weather reports. "It means you should not ignore calls from numbers you do not recognize," I said. She studied me over the rim of her mug, searching my face for weakness. I knew. That looked too. Rebecca had always tested doors before deciding which one to push through. "You are being dramatic," she said, setting the mug down hard enough for coffee to kiss the lid. "I moved some money. I bought a few things. You are acting like I burned the house down." I looked around the kitchen. The granite counter we refinanced to install. The pendant lights she chose from a magazine. The breakfast nook where we once ate pancakes on Sunday mornings when there was still softness between us. No, she had not burned the house down. She had done something quieter. She had opened all the windows in winter and expected me to pay the heating bill. "A few things?" I asked. My voice stayed even. That bothered her more than anger would have. "You spent almost everything." She rolled her eyes, and that tiny motion landed harder than any insult. "There it is," she said. "The working man speech. The spreadsheet. The martyr routine." She picked up her purse from the chair, a tan leather thing that cost more than the refrigerator in my first apartment. "You love acting like every dollar is a child you raised." I let the words settle. There was a time when I would have flinched. A man does not like hearing his sacrifices turned into a joke. He does not like standing in his own kitchen while the woman he built a life with talks about his responsibility like it is a disease. But I did not flinch. I watched her slide her sunglasses down over her eyes even though she was still indoors. Armor. That was what it was. Some people wear armor because they are afraid. Others wear it because they know they are wrong and do not want the truth touching their face. Where were you planning to go? I asked. She laughed once, dry and small. Out. Downtown. Her hand stopped on the strap of her purse. Another 2-second confession. Maybe. I nodded. The boutique on High Street opens at 10. She stared at me. You checked my purchases? I checked our account. Same thing to you. She headed for the garage, heels tapping across the hardwood. The sound used to mean she was leaving for work, for lunch with friends, for another harmless errand wrapped in perfume and confidence. That morning, it sounded like a countdown. I followed her as far as the hallway, not blocking her, not chasing her, just close enough for my voice to reach. Rebecca. She turned with one hand on the garage door. What? Do you know what pending review means? Her mouth tightened. Do not start with banking terms. It means they have not cleared everything yet. She gave me a look, then smiled again, but the smile was thinner now. You called them. They called me. That landed. I saw it. Her shoulders rose a fraction, not enough for a stranger to notice, plenty for a husband. For what? She asked. I wanted to say, for you. For the sudden withdrawals, the transfers, the charges across 3 counties in 48 hours. For the way money moves when someone is trying to empty a bucket before anyone hears the leak. But I had learned something during years of project management and marriage both. Never explain a system to someone who is actively trying to break it. Fraud prevention, I said. Her laugh came back too fast. Fraud? That is ridiculous. I am your wife. There it was, the shield she always reached for when logic got inconvenient. Wife. As if the word itself was a master key. As if vows meant unlimited access without accountability. As if marriage gave her the right to drain the account and call my concern control. I looked at the family photos along the hallway wall. Rebecca and me at Niagara Falls, wind flattening my jacket against my chest. Rebecca on the porch holding a pumpkin, laughing before the laugh became something polished and public. Me beside my mother last Christmas, both of us tired but smiling. The frames did not accuse her. They accused me. They asked how long I had mistaken endurance for love. Being my wife is not a fraud exception, I said. For the first time that morning, she had no quick answer. The garage smelled faintly of gasoline, cardboard boxes, and the lavender air freshener clipped inside her car. She opened the door, and bright morning spilled in around her. Her white SUV sat waiting, clean and glossy, a machine built for errands that somehow always became expenses. She slipped behind the wheel, started the engine, and lowered the window just enough to speak through it. I'm not doing this with you right now. I know, I said. You are going shopping. Her jaw flexed. I deserve one decent day without you making me feel guilty. That sentence almost did it. Almost pulled the old Ethan out of the ground. Because guilt had been her favorite mirror for years. Hold it in front of me. Make me see myself as the problem, then walk away while I tried to fix the reflection. But not that morning. That morning, the reflection was clear. Then have a decent day, I said. The garage door lifted behind her, panels rattling upward one by one. Sunlight poured across the concrete. She backed out without another word, tires whispering over the driveway, sunglasses hiding whatever was left of her confidence. I stood there until she turned out of the cul-de-sac and disappeared between 2 rows of maple trees. Then I walked back inside, poured the coffee she had left untouched into the sink, and opened my laptop at the kitchen island. The house felt bigger with her gone, not peaceful exactly, but honest. I signed into online banking again. The screen loaded, and this time a red banner stretched across the top of the page. Account activity under review. Contact Security Department for verification. Beneath it, 3 charges had changed status. Pending authorization hold. Pending authorization hold. Declined. I leaned back slowly. The first wall had gone up, and Rebecca was driving straight toward it. By 9:30, I had learned something every tired husband should learn before life teaches it the expensive way. A bank account does not just hold money. It holds the story of what 2 people value when nobody is watching. I sat at the kitchen island with my laptop open, morning light stretched across the floor, and studied the transactions the way I studied job site plans when something did not line up. Numbers do not raise their voices. They do not cry. They do not make excuses. They just sit there, clean and patient, waiting for a man to stop lying to himself. The first charge had been small, $187 at a boutique in German Village. Then $420 at a salon. Then $800 at a hotel gift shop. Then the transfers, 3 of them, all under $5,000. All to the same external account with a name clipped short by the bank system. R. Whitman. I stared at that name until the letters stopped looking like letters and started looking like a door I did not want to open. R. Whitman. Not a utility company. Not a mortgage lender. Not a hospital. A person, or at least something made to look like one. I clicked the first transfer, hoping for details, but all it gave me was a date, an amount, and the cold little confirmation number that proves a thing happened even when your heart refuses to accept it. The dates mattered. Tuesday night. Wednesday morning. Wednesday afternoon. Rebecca had not panicked. She had planned. That realization settled in my chest like wet concrete. I thought back to Tuesday, to her sitting across from me at dinner, pushing lettuce around her plate while I talked through bills. She had nodded at the mortgage, nodded at my mother's appointment, nodded when I said we needed to be careful until my quarterly bonus landed. The whole time, she had already started moving money. Not after a fight. Not in a moment of emotion. While I was explaining the walls, she was quietly pulling out the nails. My phone rang at 9:47. Unknown number. For 1 second, I thought it was Rebecca calling from some store counter, embarrassed and angry because her card had failed in front of a cashier. But when I answered, the voice belonged to a woman named Denise from the bank security department. Calm voice. Professional voice. The kind of voice built for bad news delivered carefully. She verified my name, my address, the last 4 digits of my social security number, and then she paused just long enough for me to feel the seriousness on the other end. Mr. Carter, she said, we are reviewing several unusual transactions on the joint checking account ending in 6421. We need to confirm whether you authorized recent external transfers and retail purchases. I looked at the laptop screen. The red banner stared back. I did not authorize the transfers, I said. The words sounded heavier. Out loud. Were they initiated by another authorized user? She asked. That was the clean language. Authorized user. Not wife. Not partner. Not the woman who knew which side of the bed I slept on and which coffee creamer I bought. Authorized user. A title with limits. Yes, I said. My wife. Denise did not react. Banks train people not to react. Understood. Because this is a joint account, access exists for both account holders, but the transfer pattern triggered review because of frequency, amount, location, and recent account behavior. Recent account behavior. I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny in it. Even the algorithm noticed before I wanted to. Are the cards frozen? I asked. Another pause. A temporary security hold has been placed on one debit card and certain outgoing transfers. Additional activity may require branch verification. There it was. Not revenge. Not drama. Just procedure. A gate swinging shut because the numbers had finally told the truth loudly enough. What happens now? I asked. Denise explained it carefully. I could visit the branch with identification. I could dispute unauthorized transfers if applicable, though joint access made things complicated. I could open a new individual account. I could redirect deposits. I could request dual approval features for certain transactions. Her voice remained steady, but each option felt like a plank being laid across water. For years, I had treated money like a marriage problem. Something emotional. Something we could talk through if Rebecca ever stopped deflecting. Denise made it sound like infrastructure. Locks. Alerts. Limits. Signatures. Systems. Things a man should have installed before the storm, not after the ceiling started dripping. When the call ended, I sat there with the phone in my hand and listened to the house breathe. Heat clicked through the vents. A delivery truck rolled somewhere down the block. I could smell coffee cooling in the pot. Everything ordinary kept happening, which was the cruelest part. Your life can come apart on a Thursday morning and the mail still arrives. I opened a blank document and started writing down the timeline. Tuesday, 7:15 in. The evening, discussion of bills. Tuesday, 9:42, first transfer. Wednesday, 11:10, luxury purchase. Wednesday, for 36, second transfer. Thursday, 6:12, low balance alert. I wrote calmly, because calm was the only tool left that still fit my hand. Then I pulled up our shared cloud folder. Rebecca had always hated paperwork unless it helped her get something. I searched for insurance statements, tax returns, loan documents, anything that showed how much of our life was tied to that account. What I found instead was a folder I did not recognize, named Trip Ideas. Inside were screenshots, hotel suites, spa packages, restaurant reservations, airline searches from Columbus to Miami, dates for the following weekend, 2 adults, king room, ocean view. My throat tightened, but I did not let myself build a story faster than the evidence could support. That was how men lose their footing. They see one shadow and start fighting ghosts. I clicked each file, saved copies, and added them to a folder on my desktop named Records. Not anger. Records. That was the new rule. At 10:17, my phone buzzed. Rebecca. I watched her name fill the screen once, twice, 3 times. Then a text appeared. Why is my car not working? No apology. No explanation. Just inconvenience. I looked at those 6 words and felt the last warm part of denial go cold. A minute later, another message came in. Ethan, this is humiliating. I pictured her at a polished counter downtown, sunglasses in her hair, purse open, cashier waiting, the machine declining what she thought she still controlled. For a moment, the image should have satisfied me. It did not. It just made everything clearer. Humiliation, to Rebecca, was a card not working in public. Humiliation, to me, was standing in my kitchen realizing my wife had gambled our stability because she assumed I would be too loyal to stop her. I typed one sentence, read it twice, and sent it before the old Ethan could soften it. The bank needs us both at the branch. The drive to the bank was quiet, not in a tense way, but in the way that empty streets feel when the sun has not yet lifted the frost from the sidewalks. I parked the truck in front of the branch, black leather seats still warm from the heater, coffee in hand, the steam curling and fading into the crisp morning air. The building loomed larger than I remembered, glass and steel reflecting the early light, and for a moment, I wondered why this place felt more like a courtroom than a service center. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of polished floors and fresh paper. People in suits walked past with briefcases, murmuring into phones or standing at counters. I approached the reception desk and explained calmly that I needed to verify recent account activity with security, the words measured, deliberate, steady. The young woman at the counter typed my information into the computer, her fingers quick and precise. She glanced up at me once, evaluating, then nodded and pressed a key that sent a small chime through the quiet. A few minutes later, Denise arrived, the same calm, professional voice I had spoken to earlier on the phone. She shook my hand briefly, then led me to a small conference room with a table, chairs, and a monitor mounted on the wall. Mr. Carter, she said, we are reviewing a series of transactions that were flagged as unusual. We need you to confirm the details, and because this is a joint account, your wife may be present if she chooses. I listened, nodded, and set the coffee down. I did not need to say more. Rebecca's absence spoke for itself. The monitor displayed the account, the transactions in neat lines of black text against a white background. Every withdrawal, every purchase, every transfer, all time-stamped, all tagged with location and vendor. I scrolled slowly, as if moving too fast would break something fragile inside me. The pattern was clear, the story undeniable. The bank had already frozen one debit card and put pending holds on transfers, giving me the quiet authority to step in without raising my own voice. I read the notes carefully, taking screenshots where needed, arranging them into chronological order. Tuesday night, first purchase at the boutique downtown. Wednesday morning, spa and hotel reservations. Wednesday afternoon, gift shop and restaurant charges. Thursday morning, low balance. Alert. I could feel the calm spreading inside me, not satisfaction, not triumph, but clarity. A man who records the truth before he reacts controls the situation better than any shout or confrontation could. Denise explained the procedures for disputing unauthorized transactions, setting up notifications, and requesting dual approval for any future transfers. I nodded at each step, absorbing the information, letting it settle. This was the infrastructure of accountability, a system built to respond when assumptions fail. For 11 years, I had assumed Rebecca would respect boundaries. That assumption had failed. The bank system did not fail. I created a folder on my laptop labeled verification and began saving everything, from screenshots to notices to emails. Each file was a small anchor in a sea of uncertainty, something concrete I could touch, while the rest of the morning spun around me. I imagined her still driving toward the boutique, her day mapped in purchases, oblivious to the fact that her access had already been restricted. I did not feel relief. I felt preparedness. I sipped the coffee, now cold, and thought about the week ahead. Meetings, emails, errands, nothing extraordinary except for the newfound clarity of who held responsibility and how a line could be enforced without yelling, without dramatics, without inviting unnecessary confrontation. I left the bank after 2 hours, the folder on my laptop full, my phone silent, the streets outside no longer empty but awake. Rebecca's car was not in the driveway. She had already returned home, had already parked, had already started a day that would not go according to her plans. I walked through the door, set my bag down, and listened to the house breathe with me. The kitchen was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the coffee machine, now empty. I sat at the counter and opened the folder, scrolling through every entry again. Each transaction a reminder, each record a statement. The house felt normal and real at the same time, the sunlight cutting across the counters highlighting the ordinary and the extraordinary intertwined. And for the first time that morning, I realized control was not a confrontation but a preparation, a knowledge of the system and the willingness to use it to restore balance, to ensure that every choice, every action, and every consequence could be traced and addressed quietly and effectively. By 11, I had drafted a summary for the week, a list of steps, and a plan for any conversation with Rebecca. Calm, collected, deliberate. She could return at any moment. She could ask questions. She could challenge. But I would be ready. And in that readiness, I found an unusual kind of power, the certainty that truth, order, and procedure were now firmly on my side, and that the morning, though still early, had already changed the course of our day and, quietly, our understanding of responsibility. By noon, the house had settled into a deceptive quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like it is waiting for a shift in temperature. I sat back at the kitchen island, laptop open, and began tracing the week's activity with methodical precision. The sunlight poured through the blinds, striping the counter with long lines of light and shadow, each stripe marking a division in the day that was mine to organize. Every transfer, every purchase, every external payment had its own line, its own timestamp, its own small clue to the bigger picture. I reviewed each vendor, each location, comparing it with the daily routines I knew Rebecca followed. Some were local, predictable, almost banal, a coffee shop, a grocery store, a boutique that sold scented candles. Others were extravagant, planned, almost theatrical. Hotel suites in downtown Columbus, spa appointments that would cost more than a week of groceries, reservations at restaurants I had never walked past before. My hand hovered over the keyboard, fingers resting lightly on the keys, because the next step required care. Documentation could not be rushed. Accuracy was my tool, precision my shield. I began a spreadsheet, not for accounting alone, but as a map of control. Columns for dates, times, vendors, amounts, purpose. Notes for context. Each line a small checkpoint, a small act of verification that transformed chaos into something manageable. I thought back to the mornings we had. Once shared over coffee, pancakes on the breakfast nook, laughter spilling over the counters, the scent of vanilla and bacon mingling with sunlight. Those mornings had not been perfect, but they had been stable, known. The contrast with today's chaos made the quiet even sharper. My phone buzzed twice, messages from Rebecca. The first read, "Why is my card not working?" The second, the cashier looked at me like I was lying. Neither apology nor explanation, just inconvenience and the faint echo of disbelief. I read them both, then set the phone aside. I did not answer immediately. Reaction had been rehearsed in this house for years, each word a test, each silence a test, and I intended to meet it with patience and strategy, not emotion. The bank had frozen certain transfers, issued alerts, and set in motion the very limits that would define the day for both of us. I leaned back, imagining her navigating downtown streets, handbag over her shoulder, sunglasses perched perfectly, unaware of the boundaries silently falling into place around her. The system had responded before she could adjust, rules applied without argument, procedures followed with impartiality. I scrolled through the folder I had created, saving screenshots, emails, and confirmation numbers, arranging them in chronological order. Each document a small declaration of fact, a silent witness to behavior and choice. There was no drama in the files, no emotion, only verification. That clarity was what I carried through the rest of the morning. I opened the windows to let in fresh air, the wind carrying the faint smell of cut grass from the cul-de-sac and the warm asphalt of cars parked along the street. The house, quiet and sunlit, offered me a space to think, to plan, to prepare. I reviewed emergency funds, upcoming bills, mortgage deadlines, and school payments. All accounted for. All safe. My hand moved from the keyboard to a notebook, where I began drafting a timeline of the day's steps, actions to take if any new transaction occurred, notes for conversation, and contingency plans. It was meticulous, deliberate, and steady. The act of planning itself brought calm, a quiet sense of authority that no argument could shake. The phone rang again. It was the bank, a confirmation of the pending reviews, a calm voice verifying details and next steps. I answered without haste, without panic, absorbing the information, repeating key points to ensure understanding, and updating my records as we spoke. Each step reinforced structure. Each verification strengthened control. By 1 o'clock, the first level of oversight was complete. I stood, stretching, letting the afternoon sun warm my shoulders, glancing at the driveway where Rebecca's car was no longer visible, the streets around our cul-de-sac quiet except for the occasional mail truck. For the first time that day, I felt a measure of balance restored, not from confrontation, not from accusation, but from preparation, documentation, and the patient application of rules. The house breathed with me as I organized the records, closed the laptop, and looked out the window at the neighborhood waking fully, knowing that the morning's tension had been contained and that each following step would be met with the same clarity and authority that had guided me through the quiet, deceptive calm. The afternoon stretched on, the light in the kitchen shifting from bright white to a warmer hue as the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon. I sat at the counter, reviewing my notes once more, each line carefully arranged, a quiet testament to control and foresight. Rebecca's car was back in the driveway, tires cold from the afternoon drive, and I could see the faint reflection of her silhouette moving inside, crossing rooms I had mapped out in my mind over countless mornings and evenings. I made no move to confront her yet. Patience had become my ally. Every step had been calculated, every measure in place to ensure that when she crossed the threshold, she would meet not anger but precision. I reviewed the account again, checking pending holds, reviewing transaction limits, verifying that every alert and freeze was properly logged, that the bank system was ready to enforce boundaries I had set without a single raised voice. Outside, the neighborhood hummed with the quiet bustle of suburban life. Mail trucks, lawn mowers, and the occasional jogger passed, ordinary and unremarkable, a contrast to the intensity of the morning and early afternoon. I poured myself another cup of coffee, watching the steam rise in delicate curls, letting the warmth settle in my hands. Each sip reminded me that the world continued, indifferent to personal turmoil, but also that it could be navigated with care and deliberation. The kitchen table, where we had shared countless breakfasts and dinners, was now a command center. The laptop open with folders labeled records, verification, and timeline served as more than a digital archive. They were maps, evidence, and preparation in one. I traced each transaction again, confirming vendors, amounts, and dates, noting anomalies and patterns, understanding fully the reach and implications of each expenditure. I imagined the sequence of events that had led to this moment, the quiet accumulation of assumptions, the tiny decisions that led to a massive shift. Rebecca had acted with predictability masked as spontaneity, choices guided by habits and desires I had observed for over a decade. Recognizing patterns does not diminish their impact, but it does provide an advantage. I could anticipate, prepare, and respond with clarity rather than emotion. My phone buzzed, a new message from Rebecca, simple and controlled. Reading, I do not understand why it is not working. I did not respond immediately. The words held no accusation, no plea, only inconvenience. I let them sit, a reminder of the reality she faced and the boundaries that had quietly closed around her access. The sun had moved further west, light angling across the counter and casting shadows along the floor. I opened the spreadsheet once more, scanning each entry with the practiced eye of someone trained to spot irregularities and correlations. Each entry told a story, a narrative of choices and consequences, and I read it not with outrage but with comprehension. Procedure and structure, fact and verification became the language of authority. By 3:30, I had drafted a plan for the next steps, contingencies for any further unauthorized activity, and a method to track responses without escalating. Emotionally, the documents, emails, and screenshots were organized into subfolders, each named to indicate sequence and purpose. Every file was a foothold, a way to navigate the day with foresight and control. Outside, the neighborhood had quieted as children returned home from school and homeowners began evening routines, the ordinary rhythm contrasting with the precision I maintained inside. I glanced at the clock, then the driveway. The shadow of Rebecca moving through the house reminded me that the day would continue, but so would my vigilance. Control was not confrontation. It was preparedness, foresight, and careful application of systems built to ensure fairness and clarity. Each breath I took, each note I reviewed, reinforced a sense of authority and calm that no argument or gesture could disrupt. The house breathed with me, rooms silent except for the hum of appliances, and I felt a rare combination of anticipation and steadiness, knowing that when interaction became necessary, it would occur on my terms, guided by facts, preparation, and the quiet but undeniable power of structure. Every step taken, every record saved, every hold enforced was a declaration of clarity and boundaries, and in that certainty, I found a calm I had not experienced in years, the quiet authority of someone who had observed, documented, and prepared, ready to navigate the unfolding evening with careful deliberation and unwavering attention. The late afternoon sunlight stretched across the hardwood floors, warming the edges of the kitchen counter where I sat, laptop open, records spread in organized arrays that looked like battle plans but were in fact lines of defense. I reviewed each transaction again, methodically, each entry a narrative of choices and consequences, each vendor and timestamp a small window into intention and pattern. Rebecca had returned home hours ago, and I could hear the faint shuffle of her movements upstairs, the distant hum of the television, the quiet rhythms of a day continuing as normal. I did not hurry to confront her. Every moment spent in observation was an opportunity to build clarity, to ensure that when the conversation occurred, it was guided by facts, not emotion. I opened the spreadsheet and began color-coding entries, highlighting transfers that exceeded typical daily limits, marking expenditures that were repetitive or directed toward unusual recipients, and noting locations outside the city. Each action built a map of behavior, a record that made abstract concern tangible. The folder on the desktop labeled verification contained screenshots of the bank app, confirmation numbers, correspondence with security, and timestamps that created an undeniable chronology. I moved through the documents like a surveyor mapping terrain, noting peaks and valleys of spending, plotting where attention was needed and where intervention was already underway. My phone remained silent. No messages from Rebecca since the early afternoon, a temporary lull that allowed me to focus, to organize, to prepare mentally for the next interaction. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator's hum and the faint ticking of the clock above the stove, a metronome marking time in a space that had once felt ordinary but now carried the weight of scrutiny and accountability. I thought about the past, the years of careful budgeting, shared goals, and unspoken agreements that had been treated as invisible boundaries by someone who assumed privilege. This reflection was not nostalgia. It was recognition of the foundation that had been taken for granted and the steps necessary to restore it. I drafted a plan for managing the remainder of the day, noting contingencies for any new attempts at transactions, instructions for the bank if questions arose, and procedures for documenting every interaction with precision. Each step reinforced authority, clarity, and control, building a framework that did not rely on confrontation but on the undeniable evidence of record and procedure. Outside, the neighborhood hummed with typical suburban activity: children returning from school, neighbors mowing lawns, cars moving along the quiet streets. The ordinary rhythm of life continued as a backdrop to the careful orchestration inside the house. I poured another cup of coffee, letting the warmth settle in my hands, and considered the structure I had built. The verification folder, the spreadsheets, the records, and the pending alerts all converging to create a system that no spontaneous action could override. Rebecca's movements upstairs became a gentle echo, a reminder that she was present yet unaware of the measures now in place. I reviewed the procedure outlined by the bank again, memorizing key points, noting contact numbers, preparing for any questions or challenges that might arise. Calm, methodical, deliberate. The kitchen, sunlight stretching across the counters, became a place of planning, reflection, and quiet authority. Each sip of coffee, each line of the spreadsheet, each documented transaction reinforced a sense of readiness that no reaction could disrupt. I leaned back, looking out the window at the maple trees lining the cul-de-sac, their leaves flickering in the breeze, a reminder that life continued outside the walls yet inside. Every decision, every record, every action was under my observation and control. By 5 o'clock, I had reviewed and documented every pending action, confirmed security measures, and finalized notes for the evening. The sun had begun its descent, casting long shadows across the floors and counters, and I felt a rare steadiness settle over me. Preparedness, documentation, and careful oversight had transformed what could have been chaos into a framework of clarity and measured response, ensuring that the day's events would be met not with panic or argument, but with calm, calculated authority. I closed the laptop briefly, feeling the rhythm of the house around me, aware of Rebecca moving in the other rooms, and understood that control was not about confrontation but about readiness, foresight, and the quiet, deliberate application of fact and procedure to restore balance to the day and to the account that had been challenged. At 5:23, Rebecca came downstairs with the kind of silence that announces itself before a single word is spoken. I heard each step before I saw her, the careful rhythm of heels on wood, slower now than they had been that morning. No sharp confidence, no polished exit, just measured movement, like someone walking toward a conversation. They had rehearsed, but no longer trusted. I looked up from the kitchen island. The laptop was open again, the spreadsheet visible, not hidden, not displayed for drama, simply there, because facts did not need to be concealed. Rebecca stopped at the edge of the kitchen, one hand wrapped around her phone, sunglasses gone, makeup still perfect except for the tiredness around her eyes. That was the first honest thing I had seen on her face all day. "We need to talk," she said. I nodded once. "We do." She glanced at the screen, then at the folders beside my notebook, and something changed in her expression. It was not fear exactly. It was calculation running out of road. She set her purse on the counter with deliberate care, the tan leather folding softly against the granite. That purse had been a birthday gift to herself last year, bought after she told me we needed to cut back on eating out. I remembered the receipt. I remembered pretending not to care. A marriage can die in one betrayal, but sometimes it starves slowly on tiny hypocrisies served with a smile. "You embarrassed me today," she said. I waited, giving her the space to hear her own words. She did not. "Do you know what it feels like to stand at a register and have your card declined in front of people?" I looked at her hands. Her fingers were tight around the phone. "Yes," I said. "It probably feels terrible." Her eyes narrowed, as if my calm insulted her more than any accusation could. "Do not patronize me. I am not. You had no right to make me look like that." The sentence landed in the kitchen and sat there between us, bright and ugly. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside, tires whispering over the cul-de-sac pavement. I thought of the low balance alert at 6:12, the mortgage due in 6 days, my mother's bill clipped to the pantry calendar, the transfers to R. Whitman, the hotel screenshots sitting quietly in a folder. Then I looked at Rebecca, really looked at her, and realized she still believed the worst part of the day had happened to her. That was when my last excuse for her folded in on itself. "The bank froze the card because of the spending pattern," I said. "Not because I wanted to embarrass you." She gave a short laugh with no humor in it. "You expect me to believe the bank just decided that? They called me before you left this morning, and you let me walk into that store anyway." I leaned back slightly. I told you to answer your phone. Her mouth opened, then closed. There it was, the little gap where blame looked for a place to stand and found none. She turned away, pacing once across the kitchen, then back, the movement restless but contained. This is ridiculous, she said. It is a joint account. It is. My name is on it. It is. Then I can use it. You did. That stopped her. Simple words are dangerous when they leave no corner to hide in. She stared at me, and for the first time all day, the room felt like it had both of us inside it. Not the version of us we showed neighbors. Not the framed photo version in matching sweaters at Christmas. The real us. One person standing with records. One person standing with outrage that accountability had arrived. I turned the laptop slightly, not pushing it toward her, just making the screen easier to see. $41,638 was in that account on Monday morning. Her eyes flicked to the screen. Do not do this. By this morning, the available balance was under $25. Ethan. 3 external transfers. 9 retail transactions. 2 hotel-related charges. 1 pending airline search saved in our cloud folder. Her face changed at that last one. Not much. Rebecca had always been good at small reactions. But I saw it. The tiny falter. The blink that came half a second too late. The breath she took before deciding which life fit best. You went through my files? She asked. Our shared folder. That is private. The checking account was private too, until you emptied it. Her cheeks colored. I did not empty it. I moved money. To R. Whitman. The kitchen went still. Even the house seemed to stop breathing. Rebecca looked down at her phone, then at the window, then back at me. That name had weight. I felt it drop through the room. That is not what you think, she said. I almost smiled, not because it was funny, but because men have heard that sentence for generations. It is the little white flag people wave while still trying to hold the fort. I have not told you what I think. She folded her arms. Renee Whitman is a travel consultant. For Miami? Her eyes flashed. I needed a break. From what? From this. She gestured around the kitchen, at the counters, the bills, the house, maybe at me. From feeling trapped inside your fear all the time. There it was again. My responsibility, renamed as fear. My caution, dressed up as weakness. My labor, turned into a cage she needed luxury to escape. I looked at the pantry door where my mother's bill still hung under a magnet shaped like Ohio. You knew about the mortgage, I said. You knew about the brake repair. You knew my mother needed help this month. Rebecca looked away. You always make everything heavy. The words did not hit like they used to. They passed through me and landed on the facts. No, I said quietly. I kept everything from falling. Her jaw tightened, but she did not answer. I opened the folder labeled Timeline and clicked the first screenshot. The screen showed the Tuesday night transfer, time-stamped 9:42. This started 27 minutes after we talked about bills. I clicked the next. Then this. Next. Then this. Next. Then the bank flagged the pattern. Each click was soft, almost gentle, but the sound filled the kitchen like a gavel. Rebecca's confidence thinned with every image. She gripped the edge of the counter, eyes moving across the screen, not because she did not know what she had done, but because seeing it organized removed the fog she had counted on. You are treating me like a criminal, she said. No, I replied. I am treating the money like it matters. She looked at me then, and for one brief second I saw something under the anger. Not remorse. Not yet. Something closer to surprise. Like she had expected yelling, begging, a door slammed. A scene she could retell later with herself as the wounded one. Instead, she found a spreadsheet, bank records, and a husband who had finally stopped mistaking calm for surrender. My phone buzzed on the counter. A new email from the bank appeared across the screen preview. External transfer review requires in-branch authorization from both account holders. Rebecca saw it too. Her face went pale in the way paper looks pale under fluorescent light. I picked up the phone, read the message, and set it back down carefully. They will not release the remaining transfers without both of us present, I said. She swallowed. You cannot block me from my own money. I am not blocking you, I said. The bank is asking questions. Her eyes hardened. Then what do you want? I looked around the kitchen one more time, at the house we had built and neglected in different ways, at the sunlight fading across the counters, at the evidence sitting between us like a third person who had finally been invited to speak. I want the truth before we go to that branch, I said. Rebecca looked at the laptop, then at me, and for the first time that day, she had no polished answer ready. The sun had dipped lower, casting long shadows across the living room, stretching from the couch to the kitchen where the laptop still hummed softly in the background. I stood, closing the spreadsheet gently, each click and drag of the mouse a punctuation to the morning and afternoon's quiet labor. Rebecca remained in the kitchen doorway, arms folded, eyes flicking between the screen, the folder of records, and me, measuring, calculating, unsure how to respond to a calm that had replaced the tension of the day. I walked toward her slowly, deliberately, each step measured to show presence without intimidation. I need to understand why this happened, I said, voice steady, neither accusing nor pleading, simply stating the need for clarity. She inhaled sharply, then exhaled, the tension in her shoulders relaxing fractionally, a sign that the dialogue we had avoided all day was finally beginning. I do not know where to start, she admitted, the first real admission all morning, eyes briefly dropping to the counter. I nodded, letting the silence hang, because a pause often speaks more than a sentence. I gestured to the folder labeled Timeline. Walk me through it, I said. Every transfer, every purchase. She stepped closer, hesitant, and began recounting her activities, the details scattered, some dates correct, others misremembered, but her tone lacked the earlier confidence and deflection. I listened, confirming facts where necessary, noting discrepancies, staying calm and present. Each admission was small, incremental, but together they formed a complete picture that matched the records I had meticulously documented. The air shifted slightly, not in confrontation but in acknowledgement. She was recognizing the structure I had established, the evidence, and the limits now imposed. I did not think it would matter so much, she said quietly, almost to herself. I thought it was harmless. I did not respond immediately. Harmlessness is subjective, but consequences are absolute. I let the words sit in the space between us while she looked down at her hands, fingers intertwined, waiting for my reaction. Every dollar has a purpose, I said finally, calm and precise. Every payment, every plan. Disregarding that is not harmless. It is a breach of trust. She nodded slowly, the first nod that carried acknowledgement rather than defiance. The clock ticked steadily, marking minutes that had previously been filled with tension and uncertainty. I outlined the steps going forward. Verification of any pending transactions, dual approval on significant purchases, and immediate communication for any transfers outside of ordinary patterns. Each instruction was delivered evenly, without anger, but with authority rooted in evidence and preparation. Rebecca listened, sometimes glancing at the screen, sometimes at the documents, absorbing each point. The tone of the conversation had shifted from confrontation to understanding, structured and factual. Outside, the lights softened further, a golden hue filling the windows, and the quiet of the neighborhood matched the new calm inside. I reflected briefly on the morning's events, the careful observation, the documentation, the measured response, and the absence of dramatics. I realized that control had not come from raising my voice or issuing threats. It had come from preparation, from tracking facts, from turning chaotic behavior into an organized record that allowed reason and structure to govern the outcome. Rebecca spoke again, softer, quieter. I did not realize how serious it was. I nodded once, a small acknowledgement, and gestured toward the bank documents. It is serious because it affects both of us. Accountability is not about blame. It is about clarity and security. She looked down, absorbing the weight of those words, her previous composure replaced with reflection. I poured a fresh cup of coffee, set it on the counter between us, and sat back, letting the afternoon settle into a rhythm where conversation, preparation, and acknowledgement coexisted. Each element of the day, the records, the timeline, the pending holds, the clear instructions, had created a framework that would guide decisions without the need for chaos or confrontation. For the first time since the morning alert, the house felt balanced, quiet in a purposeful way. Rebecca and I were no longer operating in ignorance or assumption. Facts, systems, and preparation had replaced uncertainty. I watched her, her posture shifting slightly, the tension in her shoulders easing, and understood that while trust might require time to rebuild, the day had provided the structure, clarity, and evidence necessary for both accountability and progress. The kitchen remained bright with soft sunlight, the laptop closed now, and the records arranged neatly. The house breathed alongside us, and in that calm, I realized that control had been established not through argument, but through documentation, foresight, and steady observation, creating a day that would not be defined by chaos but by reason, preparation, and the undeniable power of recorded truth.